Hi, it's Miss Andrea, and in today's homeschool story time, we're going to discuss the elementary school years. You're going to see me looking down a little bit because I did, make an outline to follow because it's a lot of years and a lot of things went into our middle school years for us. Okay, so let's get to it. So, you remember where I left off? We were in a homeschool school. Um, that the kids did 1 day a week that did history through the arts. So, since we're in that homeschool program that did art through the history time periods, what we did was we went ahead and used those time periods as our guidelines for our other subjects, most specifically reading and writing, because we're still doing time for learning. Um, and but we did kind of double up because I wanted them to learn from different perspectives because I know for me, I have to hear something 2 or 3 times before it becomes solid. So we did time for learning. And then on some days, as we went deeper into elementary school, and then some days we pulled out books. Okay. Um, so we used those time periods as our guidelines for the other subject. And the thing about time for learning was they showed you all the subjects for the year. So you could see the little circles of which subjects there were. And we could pick and choose based on what we were doing in the other program so that everything was contiguous. I didn't like, we're talking about rain here, but here we're talking about flowers. Whatever we're talking about there, I want to reinforce it here, and just keep everything smooth sailing. And we'd attack each subject, from different angles and learn it, learn it, learn it. Anyway, so each year we would pull out the syllabus of the homeschool program. They would give us, what weeks they were going to be learning what, and then pick out interesting biographies and historical fiction that kept us right in pace with what they were being taught through art and history, and matched it up to the years, like straight to the years whenever possible. We also had the Kingfisher Science Encyclopedia. I know I've spoken about the Kingfisher History Encyclopedia. We also had the Kingfisher Science Encyclopedia, and would pull that out and also review whatever science was going on that same timeline as well. Okay, so outside of academics, we were doing taekwondo, and we eventually switched that over to fencing for the sport. We gave track a chance because my daughter was a very fast runner until her body changed. But the homeschool co-op we were using for sports, because we were like, oh, there's another homeschool co-op down the street. They do a lot of physical stuff, and they did math and stuff too. But I, wanted to try them out and see what they were up to. So I just signed up for their athletic programs. So we were doing fencing and we were doing track. And the track teacher lost my child. So yeah, let's just talk about that for a quick second. So, not going to say the name of the group, it is defunct. But this was a group where there was a lot of bickering going on anyway. It was a secular homeschool group. And if someone mentioned Christianity, everybody would go off. But there were other religions in there, like Muslim and Judaism and stuff. And they could mention that, but if you mention Christianity, people would lose their minds because it's secular. Anyway, it was also, we were pretty much the melanin there. And we did a few filters with this group too, but so whatever activities my kids did. Oh, we also did the why. I'll come back to that. Whatever activities my kids did, I was there. And but I couldn't jog. I'm not small and I'm not fast. So I trusted the track teacher to look out for my kid. And it was a big park. And in Georgia, especially the greater Atlanta area, we have these huge parks, and they all have these gorgeous tracks that go through the woods. And people have been attacked in those woods. So, you have to team up. So I guess my kid was 10, and the other kids doing track, she was so small at that age. The other kids doing track were roughly 10 through 15, and he teamed them up in pairs and groups of 3 or 4, and sent them around the track. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching every group come back. And I see kids that look like they were in my daughter's group, and they came back without her. And I tried to be calm, but I was seething. And everyone was back except for my daughter. And the track teacher looked at me like, and I just really didn't say anything to him. I just, went like the opposite way, the way she should have been coming out. I went that way. I just started walking. And I walked the whole track and didn't find her. Oh my God, I like to die. But I did meet people who said they saw her turn around and go back the other way. Because what she did was, when it got to the scary part, and everyone had left her, even though they were told to stay in groups, and they just didn't see any value in waiting for this particular kid who was not like the others, and they left her. She turned around the scary part and went back the other way. And I got back to the other side, and I saw my kid, and the coach was lecturing them about not doing what they were supposed to do. And I took my kids, and we didn't do any more track, because my kid wasn't getting dragged into the woods, because that's what was happening. Women were getting dragged into the woods. Are you kidding me? And I think the year was kind of over anyway, so I just didn't sign back up. But I don't trust people with my kids anyway, and that did not help. And the fencing teacher was a little verbally abusive. We did find a better fencing teacher later. Anyway, so where was I? Oh, and what was the other thing we did that I just said? I got so mad I forgot. We did fencing. We did track. And I'll remember later. Fencing, track, taekwondo. Nope, don't remember. So I'm gonna aside. So co-ops can be great, and co-ops can be bad. And co-ops are also kind of the glue that keeps you sane during your homeschool years. I found the online groups kept me most sane, and there were different online groups. There was a non-secular online group. There was a Christian online group. I joined a couple of Black homeschool groups, but in the early years, it was a little militant. But later I rejoined some, and they had chilled out a little bit. Like, it was just, we're Black, we're homeschooling, we need other support. Where in the early years, it was like, we're homeschooling and we're teaching our kids about Africa, and that's it. Things have I mean, they all exist out there. There's the people that homeschool that don't want people that look like me in their groups. So all the groups are out there. And I eventually found like 3 groups, like college prep groups, CLEP exam groups. We'll talk about CLEP exams later, because that's really important. CLEP. Just try a few groups till you find one for people you click with. Don't be afraid to quit. I know we had joined one group, and it was called Dudes, and a mother of a boy who had a lot of learning difficulties started this group, mainly because her son was having trouble finding friends, making friends on his own. So she started this group, and we'd go, and I'd go, and I'd bring my daughter, and she would get angry because I brought my daughter. Well, this group is just for dudes. And I'm like, and what would you like me to do with the dudette? She can sit on my lap and we can hang out in the corner and do our thing. Well, it's for mothers and dudes. So we either have the dudette with us because she's my child, or we don't come at all. And eventually, the boy that she started the group for was abusive to the other kids. Really bad, like really bad. She didn't try to control his behavior, and it may have been impossible too. I don't know exactly what his deficits were, but eventually, it was just a hostile environment for my daughter, and my son was leaving angry, and I quit. And she called me up and called me all kinds of quitters, and I'm like, lady, no. My story times may end up being tales of why a lot of things that I did in homeschooling were not cool, or why I didn't enjoy a lot of other homeschoolers. Anyway, so we quit, and we found other things, and we just found our groove through the years. But okay, we're talking about the elementary years. That all did happen in elementary. Oh, the why. I knew I'd remember. So, I can't swim. I can't swim. Um, Long story short, I almost drowned, and my mother wouldn't let me near a pool again. So I started getting swim instructions like real early. I didn't do like the baby swim or the toddler swim, but once they hit elementary school, I got them in the pool with instructors, and I would put them with instructors and then get as far away from the pool as I could while still being able to see, because my anxiety level was so high that I didn't want the kids to feed off of that anxiety level. So, in the midst of all that we were doing, we found time for swim. We would do swim and then go to piano. We did piano also. We would go, I think it was Wednesday, late Wednesdays, we would go to swim. We'd do our schoolwork, then we go to swim. And then we go from swim to piano, because I like to, if I was out, I like to do all the things, not waste gas, line it up places that were nearby and do that. And they did swim through roughly middle school, till they were ready for a swim team, and they didn't desire a swim team. But yeah, they're really good swimmers, and they could even do some rest. They even did some rescue instructions there. So, and then we start looking at talents, because now we're getting into, we're getting close. We're getting, my son's getting into middle school, and my daughter's getting close to middle school. And I started, just like really zeroing it in. What do you love? What do you love? What are your talents? What makes you happy? And my daughter had been bugging me. She wanted to act, and she wanted to do pageants. And we went to a pageant of a friend, and that was it. She just wouldn't let go. So we entered her into children's pageants, natural pageants, no makeup, age 9 to 13. And we ended up being invited to California, a pageant in California, national pageant in California for African Americans. She went the last year that she was of age to go, because we found about it as she was aging out of that. And then the next year she was invited back to come sing. There were some things with that too. Other parents weren't nice. Other kids weren't nice. I've never told the pageant director that, because she's always like, oh, donate to us. And I'm like, my daughter would cuss me out if I sent y'all money, because people were unwelcoming, there. But that experience is what made her come to me and say, I love being on stage. I don't like competing. I've done a couple of plays. Let's stick to that. And so then that was our focus as we went into middle school. What would I have done differently? Academically, I wouldn't have worked them so hard in the elementary years. After the fact, and as I helped other homeschoolers through the years, I now feel like unschooling is the best approach for elementary years. Just let kids be kids. Just let kids learn through playing. Um, and maybe I jump too extreme when I say unschooling, so I don't really mean that. I mean relaxed homeschooling or a modified unschooling. I read a book by Mary Hood called The Relaxed Homeschooler, and it was very inspirational to me. And they were actually doing theater, like we ended up doing, and just learning as they went, um, for a lot of stuff. But yeah, so I just believe that, let them be children as long as possible, but also make sure they can do the 3 R's. And I'm going to list those things that I feel like a child should know by fifth grade. But I feel like that's really all a child needs to know by fifth grade. And here they are. They need to be able to add, subtract, multiply, divide, do fractions, decimals, percentages, and convert those fractions, decimals, percentages back and forth. They need to know the metric system, because those are the things that you take and then you take and then you go into higher math. They need to know those things almost at a muscle memory level. Like, just focus on those things, because then when they start getting the theory that they have to apply those things to, then it's natural and they just flow into that better. And then they also need to be reading at a higher level than kids should be, at that age. They need to be spelling, maybe at a high school level. And it's not as hard as it sounds. They need to be able to write a solid paragraph. They need to be able to write a solid book report. That's what children should know leaving fifth grade. That's what gets them ready for middle school. Middle school is a different story, and we'll talk about that next time, because for me, middle school is all about getting into a rhythm to get ready to get down to business. Like, okay, we need to become disciplined. We need to set schedules, and then we need to follow our schedules. But I'm giving away too much right now. So that's how our elementary years went. And know that my kids were roughly 2 years apart in elementary. She kind of had closed the gap by 1 year. So when I say our elementary years, I mean his late elementary years and her early to middle elementary years. But they kind of did everything really close together. So when I talk about middle school years next time, for him, I'm talking about sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. And for her, I'm talking about fifth, sixth, and seventh, because she did, by the way, skip eighth grade. So until next time.